Of course, game design is a lot more than putting some code in a file and hoping that your character on screen behaves as intended. And Nimso, the developer of Shallow Pond, also known as Oswin, well, the developer, not the game, knows this very well. I spent a beautiful half an hour with Nimso talking about all things creative problem solving, how to make a platformer that just feels right, and a lot more. So, let's get started with this beautiful Indie Diary number 85. Alright, hello everybody and welcome to a new episode of the Indie Diaries podcast. This is the first episode that I record in 2026, and here with me is Oswin. Now, I will not say too much about you. You're the developer of Shallow Pond, which is a beautiful little platformer, well, more on the cozy side, like an exploration game, but we'll talk about Shallow Pond as we go on. I believe you've also released a demo just recently, but I'll hand it over to you to say a few things about yourself, what you do, where you're based, and Shallow Pond indeed.
All right. Yeah. Hi. I'm Oswin. I'm from Germany, and that's also where I'm located. And I'm the solo developer of Shallow Pond, which is a cozy 3D platformer. And I've been working on this one on the side since like middle of 2023, but I've been in the games industry for about 20 years.
Ooh.
I started as a 3D character animator. That's what I've done for the longest time. But I've also done other things game related, like actually all of the art related tasks basically all of the art department related tasks through the years. But Shallow Pond is my first game as a solo dev. And it's also the first time I'm coding what I have been shying away from for a very long time. Didn't believe I could do it. But Unreal Engine and blueprint coding and friends of mine who mentored me really made it possible.
Well, between Unreal Engine and blueprint coding, I feel like it's less daunting than it could have been by doing like C# and just a raw or even GD script, depending on what you use these days. But yeah, I've used Unreal Engine for the first time just recently for a game jam. I will say the blueprint system is very interesting. It's very cool to use, like the visual scripting language and all the nodes and such. I very much prefer just raw code. Still, but it is very interesting. And also for those who are listening to this on Spotify and on other platforms, you won't be able to see what I'm seeing, but I'm seeing a beautiful wall behind you with a lot of artwork from Shallow Pond. So yeah, the artist side definitely comes through in what I'm seeing there. A lot of sketches and such. So yeah, lovely side here. But yeah, so I think we can get into the icebreaker segment of this episode, which, as I mentioned over email, and as my listeners will know, is just a very brief 60-second segment that will have some music, much like a quiz show, where we'll ask you as many questions as possible within 60 seconds. All I ask is that you just reply as quickly and as sharply as possible, so that the first thing that comes to mind, so that kind of an instinctive response. But if you're ready, I think we can get started with that segment over there.
All right.
Here we go. What is the first game you ever fell in love with?
Not particularly the first one, but I have to mention Sam & Max Hit the Road, because I really loved that one very much.
I haven't played that one yet. I will at some point. If you could only play one game for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Ooh, that's really... No, that's too tough. There are too many games that actually would have to take that spot.
I'll take that as an answer, don't worry. If you could be a game character for a day, who would you be?
I think I'd like to be Commander Keen.
Commander Keen is a good one. Okay. Tell me an underrated game in your opinion.
In my opinion, it's... how is it called? I'm sorry. Mini Shoot Adventures. It's a bullet hell adventure game.
Never heard of that one. And lastly, pitch your game in one sentence.
That would be Shallow Pond is a stylized, cozy 3D adventure platformer built around seamless transitions between land and water, where fluid movement and exploration are at the heart of the experience.
Amazing. Okay, yeah, and we are at time. Well, I'd say the one game question really tripped you up. Do you want to mention a few of those that you were thinking about?
Actually, for me, it's very much about nostalgia in general. So of course, there's like Diablo, Dungeon Keeper, Warcraft 2, StarCraft, Dune 2, Command and Conquer.
I'm seeing something there, kind of like the strategic.
Not that much. It's just that I happened to play these games back in the day. But of course, there's the Monkey Island games, which really followed me for a very, very long time. And that's also how I came to Sam & Max Hit the Road, and why I wanted to mention it, because for me that had a lot of commitment to it, because when I bought it back in the day, I think it was one of the first games that released on CD-ROM.
Okay.
And my computer wasn't capable of working with that. So the game was running at, I think, 1/3 of the speed.
Oh, wow.
But I played through it anyway. And later, when I had a faster one, I had to replay it, and it was way quicker then.
As kids, we would just play anything we could get our hands on. We weren't too worried about frame rate or just the stability of a game. If it was a game, we could just forge ahead and through it. That's really interesting. I can probably think of a few episodes in which myself I did the same. Like the game was running absolutely like shit, and then I would still play through it. But yeah, no, that's
when it's the only game you have at the time that's new, then that's it. And I think that's also that's a big thing, because nowadays there are so many games, and also so many absolutely gorgeous, great games. It's really, really hard to pick just a few of those. And back in the 90s, there were only, like, at least to a teenager, a few games that you could play, and that's it. So you actually built another kind of relation towards those games, and you cherished them more.
Yeah, I see exactly what you mean. It's just there's a lot of my favorite games are probably driven by nostalgia as well. Like the Kingdom Hearts series, I remember sitting on the floor of my living room and just playing through that game, going through the various worlds and such, in my little wonky chair, or even just on the floor itself. And I think the nostalgia factor and all those memories do make a difference there. But speaking of memories, actually, I always see these episodes as like little memoirs or kind of diaries, indeed, the indie diaries of the people that I welcome on the show. So I want to start from the very beginning. And what would you say is the first thing you remember that has to do with video games? The very first thing.
Staying up late, playing games, just completely thinking into the world of a game. While playing it, completely forgetting about everything else, visiting those, like, often very stylized, abstract worlds, and completely loving the fact that they exist.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's definitely something that I remember too. And I think that my very first experiences were with like a wonky, I did say this a few times during other episodes, so I won't go, I won't speak too much about it. But basically there was this wonky little street market console that was a ripoff of something else, most likely. It was all in black and white, and it was pixelated. So I think it was 8-bit, most likely, in black and white. And you had a lot of like mini games on it. I think it was maybe a ripoff of an Amiga or something like that, but it's like probably impossible to find these days. But that's my first approach to video games. It was with something like that my grandma got for me when I was a child. It was very interesting. And when did you realize that you wanted to make games? You said that you've been in the industry for like over 20 years or something. So when was that moment?
Actually, I never wanted to be in the games industry in the first place.
Okay.
I wanted to be in movies and animate characters there. But by some coincidence, I landed a job in the games industry, and I, of course, played the games I loved. But over the years, I realized that actually that's my place, being in
Uh-huh.
games. I really like it. I love it. I love all the people I work with, the attitude, the team spirit. Even when you're a freelancer and you're not inside a studio, it's really fun. But I started to think about making my own game when I had this character, Ripples, the main character of Shallow Pond, that I had, like, the first sketch is like from, I don't know, 2008,
Oh
something like that.
wow, okay.
And I never really knew what I would like to do with this character, not at all. So I thought about things. I tried to do a comic, graphic novel, thought about a movie, but it never really felt right.
Mm.
And then that's where like Unreal Engine and blueprint coding come at play. I talked to a friend of mine, and he was like nagging my ears for years, like, you should try that, do that blueprint coding stuff, do it
Mm.
for real, just try making your own game. And since I always had that character on my wall, I was like,
Uh-huh.
okay, let's do something with him. And that's when it started. And in the end, I think
Amazing.
it really, it's not, it doesn't have to be that like this character
Mm.
wanted to be in a video game, but that's when the problem solving really kicked in. Because when you do a game, also do a movie, like when you try to explain something, to tell a story, then it's about problem solving
Yeah,
all the way.
very
It's an
much.
iterative process. Where you start is never where you end.
Yeah,
So
that's very much true, and a lot of people out there will be able to relate with this in any creative field. It's just you get that initial idea, but then you start getting into creative problem solving, and coding is very much about that, as you may have found out by yourself by doing
yes.
Shallow Pond. Yeah. And speaking of problems, actually, what would you say? Well, you mentioned that um, at some point you said something around coding being something that you never thought you would do. So, what would you say was the biggest obstacle that you've overcome in your trying to learn how to code, even visually with Unreal Engine?
Of course, that visual part really helped a lot.
Hmm.
Um, no, well, ending in spaghetti,
Yeah, that's fine.
like
So long as
real
it works.
spaghetti, not spaghetti code, but real spaghetti all over the place in node-based coding. But the biggest hurdle was actually started at school.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
like we had coding there, and I completely hated it because the
Oh.
teacher couldn't explain it to us in a way that I would think, okay, that could be useful to me in any way. Not at all. So that's when I shied away from that, and I never really went back there. Although character animation and rigging is also very technical,
Yeah.
but not exactly like that. So that was the biggest hurdle, was to just step into this field and really with the mindset, I'm going to do it now. I'm
Mm.
just really going to do it now.
Right. Yeah. Well, you said something interesting there. Like you had coding at school. I didn't. I have a few German friends. They never mentioned that. Is that something that you do there in Germany,
It's
or it depends
just
on the
very
school?
basic stuff. You got
Ah, right. Okay.
some visual basic and
Mm.
like very rudimentary, but usually the way it worked at school for me was some of the kids were like 10 levels above the teacher
Mm. Ah.
skill wise,
Okay.
because he was also just doing it on the side because nobody else knew anything about it. Nobody
Ah.
else
Okay.
wanted to do it, but they just had to have it like in the schedule.
Yeah.
So that's the way it went. And
Wow. Yeah.
but the big thing I learned along the way without actually coding until like 2023 was how problem solving works in general, how you focus like creatively on things. And in coding, it's the same. Like it's for any creative craft, like you said, also for music, etc., etc.
Yeah.
It's always about, yeah, having like an idea, like
Mm.
some spark, and then putting in the work grinding
Yeah.
until it works,
Yeah.
because the idea, everybody can have an idea. An
Yeah.
idea by itself is nothing special. But
Mm.
what you do with it, the end result, that can be special.
Oh, that's a very very powerful thing to say, and I think I think you're absolutely right. Like, yeah, ideas everybody can have them, but when it comes to the execution, putting in the work, that's where the magic happens. So yeah, I
And
totally
that's where
get
the
that.
problems arise as well.
Exactly, yeah. But we'll get back to the problem solving thing later, towards the end possibly, because you mentioned that you learned how to problem solve creatively. But we'll get there. We'll get there. I'm interested in what you learned there. But first, speaking of magic, I'm basically, the reason I got in touch is because I fell in love just from a video with Shallow Pond's movement. I feel like it's incredibly smooth, even just looking at it, and doing such an addicting, I would say, maybe in a way, movement system that works in such a smooth way and it feels so good when you even try it out. How did you manage to nail it? Like, any fun facts or some top tips for other developers who may be doing another platformer? Because people think about platformers as, oh, you jump around, you put a little bit of physics here and there, but it's not quite as simple. So yeah, just feel free to share your experience there.
Not at all simple. Like I know the guys personally because they also live like in the next city to me, who are currently developing Super Meat Boy 3D,
Uh-huh, okay.
and they also really they have a very deep understanding of that platforming and 3D platformer stuff. But in the end, nailing something like that is a very long iterative process where you start in a place where you start feeling like, okay, this could work. And then you're like, okay, it's not working here. It's not working in this situation. He's too slow. He's not responsive
Mm-hmm.
enough. The weight needs to be different. Then you have something like coyote time, which
Uh-huh.
means when you step off an edge, you would still like to be able to jump,
Mm-hmm.
although the character technically is already in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's buffer time,
Buffer time, yeah.
like when you hit the jump button shortly before you reach the ground, you would like to jump
Mm-hmm.
when the character is on the
Yeah.
ground. And then there's ledge grabs, etc. So a lot of systems you need to put into place to make all of this happen
Mm-hmm.
and to feel right. And there's still things where I'm like, okay, I need to tweak that.
And what I really like about what you just said there is the fact that a lot of those things are, like, as you said, systems. They work in the background, and the player doesn't even know they're in place most of the times.
That's true, but you notice when they are
You
missing.
notice when they're
That's the
missing.
part.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
It's like a bass player in music. Like when you don't have that bass
Yeah.
player, you miss him. But when he's just put in right, you won't notice at
That
all.
is absolutely true. Yeah. And speaking of, features and movement and such in Shallow Pond, what would you say was the hardest feature to implement in Shallow Pond that you can share and is not spoilery?
Yeah, the hardest thing, of course, is that I have two games in one by having a water system as well.
Yeah.
So, and that's also one thing I noticed when playtesting with players, and that's why I decided to have a tutorial because some players, although you play a small diver, they wouldn't jump into a pond on
Okay.
by themselves. They would always circle around it, not go in because in games you die when you jump
Mm-hmm.
into
Yeah.
water. So that's like a convention that I have to work with that. But yeah, having those two worlds and always thinking about it, and of course I'm gonna expand it, etc., etc. That's really tough
Mm.
because having a good platformer by itself is really tough, and then having underwater mechanics,
It's
yeah,
also really tough. Yeah, the
that's a
swimming, I
great mix.
suppose the swimming is not really that easy to implement.
Really not.
Right. Well, then I think this is something that I've never tried before. So let's see if it works. I have a playful exercise in mind that might get people to understand your game a little bit better. So let's try this. Pick 3 real world items that describe your game.
Real world
Mm-hmm.
items that I really love
Uh-huh.
a lot is watercolors,
Okay.
like analog media in general,
Uh-huh.
like pen and ink, all of that.
Okay.
That's part of my mix. And another one would be small toys,
Okay.
like Lego figurines or something of that
Uh-huh.
sort. And then there's just like a beautiful song of music that's playing in the background.
Okay, yeah, I like that. It's not it's tough. I think you really suggested a really good mood there. I think that's that really gives the right idea around Shallow Pond, I think, and what I've seen so far. So yeah, and on the topic of players and such, obviously you mentioned play testing. What would you say has been one of the most memorable reactions that someone has had to Shallow Pond? Something you really remember stood out?
One of the most memorable ones has definitely been when I like made it work on the Steam Deck
Uh huh.
for it to work okay. And I showed it just to friends and family at some family event. I just brought the Steam
Mm-hmm.
Deck with me, and there were like kids and young
Uh huh.
adults, and I just handed it over to them. And the first one was playing,
Mm-hmm.
and after time all of them were sitting there and like, oh, that's cool, and now let me
Oh,
play. And
nice.
they were completely freaking out about it, without like any
Anything,
introduction of
okay.
any.
Well, you've done something special when that happens, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, that's actually what I try to trigger, not to feed my ego with
Yeah, no,
it,
but
not at
to
all,
see other people's
but
smiles.
because of the smiles and because of what kind of feeling I would like to
Mm-hmm.
evoke in people. Because I won't bring world peace to anyone. I don't have the tools at hand to do that. I don't think anyone really has the tools,
Mm-hmm.
but I can actually just, as game developers, especially of cozy games or of games that just try to be magical in some
Mm-hmm.
kind of way, our mission is to give people something that they could dream with.
Yeah, I think that's a very good sentiment, a very great way to describe what game developers do in general. Game developers like you and people who really love this medium, which actually leads me to my next question, which is the core of the Indie Diarist and the whole reason why I started talking to people around the world. When you really think about it, Oswin, why are you a game developer? What drives you forward?
Because of the feelings that I got when I was starting playing
Uh
games.
huh.
All of those years where I just, yeah, was having a good time in games,
Mm-hmm.
and working on games just keeps me from losing that child inside of
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I absolutely love that. I think I see myself in that answer, in that sentiment too. And with all that said, what would you say is your one wish for Shallow Pond?
Of course, for it to succeed,
Mm-hmm.
but in particular, the one wish I personally would have to Shallow Pond, would for it to be successful enough for me to keep doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like focus on doing solo dev games, because I like having my playground where I can play with crayons, and
The analog.
that's a very
Yeah.
nice playground for that.
The analog mention that you didn't that you said earlier. Okay, yeah, well, believe it or not, Oswin, we are at the end of this episode together. It's flown by, I will say, and really loved everything we said. Before we get to some parting words, I want to go back to that problem solving element that you mentioned, and I'm curious because you mentioned the approach to creative problem solving and such. Where can other people find more resources on that? How did you personally learn, or do you have any tips off the top of your mind that you want to give to other people on how to approach creative problem solving and how you personally do it?
Yeah, well, my perspective, of course, is the perspective of a solo
Of
dev.
course.
So
Yeah.
I do lots of different things. I wouldn't really advise anyone to just start by doing exactly that.
Okay.
So, because my own way has been to specialize in one area
Just art, yeah.
and expand from there.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever you specialize in, that would be, at least the way I learned it, that's where problem solving starts, kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you start mastering one craft, you have more possibilities to problem solve. When you're like always on fire, always having things around you that you completely don't understand, and you try to make that work, you need to be tough as nails to make that happen. But problem solving in general, I think there are several approaches to it, because I have also worked as an animator, animation supervisor, etc. So I know how people work and think. And I would highlight two approaches. One would be like the slow way, where you slowly approach the target you try to reach. And the other one would be the bold way, where you just completely shoot beyond the target and then dial back.
Okay. I see.
And oftentimes that bold move makes for a faster iteration, whereas when you slowly build towards a goal, it takes longer. And yeah, in the end, you realize, okay, I should have thought way more bold to make it really work.
Yeah.
But problem solving in general is about just starting with that blank page, or however you call it in your craft, and be brave to just put something down there. For me, well, I also do a lot in watercolor, so for me it's just putting blobs of paper, of paint in there, and then decide, okay, where would I like to go next? Because when you completely overthink it, you're not solving any problems. You have to start, you have to fail, you have to repeat all of that. So it will only get better through iterations. That's the only approach. And to not shy away from asking friends for help, or mentors of some kind.
In a lot of a lot of creative arts and in craft and in general, it's often way easier to remove than it is to add. So I think you really have a very strong point there, because even in writing, myself, I see myself as a writer in specialism, and even there, like the advice to kill your darlings is always does apply very much when you overwrite, and then you just style it back a little bit. First, get the draft out there. The worst thing that's going to happen is you can edit it down, and then you can refine it and polish it. But if you have to add an entire chapter, then that becomes overwhelming after a while. So yeah. But amazing. I think we spoke about a lot of very, very amazing and interesting things. So now it's time for some parting words, Oswin. So where can other people find you? And if they do, what is the best way for them to support you?
The best way, of course, is to add a wish list on Steam for Shallow Pond. You can find it there. You can play the demo for free on Steam. There's also a survey linked. A survey is linked to the demo. Which has also given me a lot of very positive and also very insightful input, which is great. So if you happen to play the demo, give feedback, because what I did also on Twitter, where you can find me, or on TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, Threads. What I did when I started posting, particularly on Twitter, was to just ask for feedback. And a lot of the feedback I got really made it into the game to some degree, because I was always thinking about, okay, what could I improve? And a lot of the feedback was very, very great. So follow me if you like. I'm a solo dev, so I do that on my own. I do have a composer, but that's it. So if you would like to have some insights, just follow me on one of those channels. And if you like, play the demo. I could recommend doing that.
And of course, leave some feedback, as I was saying here, because that is gold to other developers and to developers in general. So, well, thank you so much, Oswin. And of course, I will have all of these links in the description of the episode. So listeners, just head over there to see all the ways in which you can support Oswin. But that is it for this episode of the Indie Diarist. Thank you so much for wanting to come to the show, onto the show, and for accepting to be part of this interview. I think it was really fun, really insightful, and I hope other people will think the same. Any more thoughts before we will leave?
Thanks a lot for having me, and keep doing this.
Oh, thank you.
I really think it's great, because you put a lot of effort into this, and I think it shows, and it's important that people understand, especially what indie devs do.
Thank you so much. Those are very, very precious words. Thank you so much, Oswin. All right, well, what can I say, my friends? That's a wrap on another Indie Diary number 85 with Oswin, also known as Nimso Online, whom for once I reached out to, and I'm so grateful that Oswin, you agreed to be on the show and you accepted my invitation, because this was definitely a great way to open 2026 with a new episode. Thank you so much. And of course, I would like to remind everybody that despite Oswin's amazing words at the end, I only do this for you. So if you are a game developer, an indie game developer of any kind, you got a studio, you're a solo developer, whatever you do, you're trying to do your dream game, just get in touch. I would love to have you on the podcast and maybe on one of my live streams on YouTube. On youtube.com/theindiediaries, where you can find me streaming and such. But now, listeners, if you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating, subscribe to the show, or send me a comment on social media, send me a DM on Discord, I don't know, whatever you want. But you can find links to support the show in the description of the episode, as well as links to, of course, support Oswin himself, so please make sure to check those out. There are other ways in which you can support the show, of course, and one of them is patreon.com/theindiediarist, where you will gain access to all episodes in advance, including my long-form video essays. I'll wrap this up by thanking Peleg, my amazing Patreon, and I'll speak to you guys in the next episode.